So if I get this here, I'll just put it in. We are attached to this video. We're talking about attachment style. One of the things we notice about attachment is that it's an emotion-laden and object-specific bond between an individual and a specific object. That's according to Chu et al. In the research. Attachment is so important when we look at our early life. It's based on the quality of early caregiving experiences and the attachment bond formed between infants and their primary caregiver. The psychologist John Bowlby and his colleague Mary Ainsworth first developed attachment theory in the 1960s and 1970s. So it's pretty recent with regard to psychological theory. Now, there are various different attachment styles. It's pretty basic in many ways, but then it can get a little bit tricky because each individual is different. I've experienced this in so many ways, especially with young children, and it can, of course, occur in infancy, but the results and the knock-on effects of this can become lifelong dictators of a person's whole life course, insofar as difficulties with relationships after the infancy period can be very, very tricky. You might, for example, adopt a child at a very young age. They could be 3 years of age and they're adorable. You think they are the type of child that you could guide, you could help, you could make to become a very, very good adult with your care. Maybe you feel that there's that rapport, and indeed there probably is with a young child. They're just an infant. They're perhaps not even speaking words, just about moving or walking. And so there's so many fundamental things that you can give to this child, and you can rear them to become a very good adult in years to come. This is a wonderful thing, adoption, fostering, wonderful things. However, if a child has had very bad treatment from up to maybe 2.5, 3 years of age, their attachment style is dictated on the remaining percentage of their life. It all boils down to how our brain is so small. There's very little minute areas of our brain and core brain, shall we say, that's being used when we're very young at that age, and how our emotions then develop around that and our experiences with our very close and closest caregiver are going to wire our brain about how I receive and give love, how I receive and give emotions. Very difficult to emphasize how we can rewire that brain after those couple of years. Such is the importance of those couple of years with regard to our attachment style. So we can have problems as a teenager that never resulted. Trust me, I've seen this happen. Never resulted from ages 3, when they were such an ideal child, 4, where we were bonding and we were teaching them and they were mimicking us in a good way, 5, where they developed and graduated, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, boom, suddenly they're a different human being. And you're thinking, oh God, here we go, puberty, right? That makes sense. That's a typical reason. I don't know their mother or father. Perhaps they could be adopting them, could be fostering them. And so I didn't know what type of individual they were. So maybe it's genetics mixed with puberty here. So I should be a little bit different here with them. Just give them a bit of time. We all went through it ourselves. Maybe I was an antichrist myself. Maybe you're thinking that way. Maybe you were more angry or upset and emotional. And maybe this is what you put your parents through. Or maybe not. Maybe you notice that there's such a change in this individual when they hit puberty and around that age that it's actually off-putting. They can't connect with you at all emotionally. But that can be despite all the great work you've done as a parent or foster parent, insofar as giving them a guardianship as such up to those age groups, that it's the underlying brain and how it began to develop at that very sensitive time, the infancy, where now it's beginning, as a teenager, you're beginning to naturally become more independent of the adults, and you're supposed to use what you've learned in things in life, and you're becoming more social as a teenager. Naturally, relationships are becoming more curious. Sex, all of these things are becoming a thing which is very new to you, but there's a certain expectation maybe of making new friends or changing schools as well. So there's a lot of change. You're physically have more energy, you're more confident in yourself, and yet you can't form the bonds. You, the person who, by the way, has, in this example, an attachment disorder, you try to form bonds with people, or your parents or your adopted parents or foster parents and yourself start falling out. You don't even know why. Then you push forward into your adult years, and suddenly it's like very difficult to be intimate with somebody, say in a romantic or sexual sense, because of this underlying brain disorder, which essentially comes from the attachment style that you have learned in your infancy. Now, when I say brain disorder, it's disorder insofar as it's not as regular as, we'll say, a normal nuclear family where you have a genetic father, a genetic mother, biological that is, of the child, and they have brothers and sisters, and they're in a loving environment, and they're cupped and held by others, and there's grandparents, and there's friends and family, and it's all very regular. And you learn from that. You learn to seek out other partners in your romantic affairs, say in later years, that mimic that, because that's what you see as normal. But it's like distorted in the fact as well that if a person doesn't have the correct way of attaching to somebody emotionally from the immediate caregiver, which could be the mother or the father initially in those couple of years, for example, if they were abandoned as a child, they couldn't link in with an adult, and it was just maybe them feeling more independent or trying to survive, but that then will push back at them when they're adults in a very unforgiving manner. There's a lot of anxiety intertwined with this as well, and it can show various forms of attachment. They can be anxious, preoccupied attachment, for example. Individuals with the anxious, preoccupied attachment style often experience inconsistent caregiving at that vital time. For example, within our attachment realm, we do know that if a child cries, a little infant cries, they're in a cot or sitting in a bed or lying in a bed or whatever, they're 1 year of age, pick them up. Never leave them cry. They need to know that it's okay to cry, and you will get a human being to help you. That's not going to make them cry babies or make them or lack of independence or become too leaning on you too much. That's not going to happen. If they're 5 or 6, that's different. We're not going to put them in a buggy or in push them around at that age. They've got legs. Come on, let's use them, kind of thing. But at that vital age group in the infancy, it's really important so that the brain actually develops in the proper way. So in the anxious, preoccupied attachment, it can lead to children having anxiety and insecurity within the relationships. And they may even worry about abandonment and seeking constant reassurance and fear rejection. Then you've got the dismissive avoidant attachment disorder. Now, individuals with this type of disorder attachment style, they may have had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable or rejecting them when they were in childhood. Now, as a result, the child who then became an adult learned to suppress their emotions and rely on self-reliance. So therefore, becoming and feeling more independent at a very vital age where emotionally they were trying and should have been developing a sincere and really close connection with another human being. Now, dismissively attached individuals may have difficulty expressing their vulnerability or forming close emotional bonds later on in life. You can discover what your attachment style is in many ways. Then there's the fearful avoidant attachment style. Now, individuals with this style, they've experienced inconsistent or abusive caregiving in childhood, and this can lead to conflicting desires for closeness, and yet a fear of rejection or harm. They may struggle with trust issues, and have difficulty regulating their emotions and exhibit ambivalent behaviour in relationships. They may be fearfully attached individuals who may alternate between seeking intimacy one second and withdrawing from somebody in another instance. Above all, though, it's important to note that attachment styles, they're not fixed, and they can evolve over time and be influenced by life experiences. You can get therapy and personal growth if you can get a partner who is extremely knowledgeable and is aware of you feeling this way, being triggered maybe when certain social situations or hugely emotional times, pressurable times between a relationship, a couple, an adult and another adult, shall we say, come about, well then you can certainly have growth and development too. Now, additionally, individuals may exhibit a combination of attachment features or characteristics of more than one attachment style as well, which can be pretty tricky if you do not know what it is or what attachment is or how to deal with individuals. But thankfully from this video, you do now know. So I thank you for watching and hope you'll subscribe by hitting that button, please and thank you. Otherwise, and sincerely, have a wonderful day.